64 seconds into the match, Paraguay scored the fastest goal of the 2026 World Cup, a stunning finish from Matias Galarza. Paraguay 1, Turkey 0. The San Francisco Bay Area Stadium rocking, the underdog ahead. And then, in the 3rd minute of first-half stoppage time, everything changed. Not because of a goal, not because of a foul, not because of a penalty decision or a VAR review for a tackle. It changed because Miguel Almirón, one of Paraguay's most important players, their number 10, the man who was supposed to carry them through this World Cup, put his hand in front of his mouth. That was it. That was the act. A hand in front of a mouth during a confrontation with a Turkish opponent. Referee Ivan Barton of El Salvador called for a VAR review. The review lasted moments, and then he reached into his pocket and produced a straight red card. Miguel Almirón became the first player in the history of football to be sent off for covering his mouth. And in an instant, one of the most controversial rules ever written into the laws of the game became real, not in a training session, not in a friendly, not in a theoretical debate about what IFAB had approved in Cardiff, but in a World Cup match watched by hundreds of millions of people, affecting the result of a game that could determine whether Paraguay reached the knockout rounds of the 2026 FIFA World Cup. Football changed tonight. Whether it changed for better or worse, that is the question the sport is now furiously debating. Stay with us, because the story of this moment goes back months, involves one of football's most celebrated anti-racism campaigns, and has consequences that will reshape how the game is played at every level from now on. To understand what happened in Santa Clara tonight, you have to go back to February. Real Madrid versus Benfica, UEFA Champions League, one of the most combustible atmospheres club football produces, and a young Argentine winger named Gianluca Prestiani approached Vinicius Jr., Brazil's star forward, a man who has spent years speaking courageously and publicly about the racial abuse he has experienced throughout his career, and covered his mouth with his shirt while he spoke. Nobody could see what Prestiani was saying. Nobody could lip-read it. Nobody could verify it. Vinicius accused him of directing a racial slur. Prestiani denied it entirely. The match was halted for 10 minutes. The football world erupted. Prestiani was provisionally suspended for the second leg of the tie while an investigation was conducted. And FIFA President Infantino, watching all of this, decided he had seen enough. He spoke publicly in language that left no ambiguity. If a player covers his mouth and says something and this has a racist consequence, then he has to be sent off, obviously, he told Sky News. There must be a presumption that he has said something he shouldn't have said. Otherwise, he wouldn't have had to cover his mouth. I simply do not understand. If you don't have something to hide, you don't hide your mouth when you say something. That statement, presumption of guilt for covering your mouth, became the philosophical foundation of a rule change. The International Football Association Board, the body that governs the laws of football, met in Cardiff and approved it. Any player who deliberately covers their mouth during a confrontational situation with an opponent or an official may receive a straight red card. No proof of what was said, no requirement for a witness. The act itself is the offense. And tonight, in the 48th minute at San Francisco Bay Area Stadium, Miguel Almirón gave that rule its first test in football history. If you are watching this and care about what is happening to football, the rules, the decisions, the changes being made at the highest level, subscribe now and hit the bell. Because what this red card means for the future of the game is a conversation the football world has barely started.
The sequence of events matters precisely. Paraguay had been outstanding in the first half. A goal in 64 seconds, Galarza's strike the fastest of the entire tournament so far. Turkey were struggling to break through a determined defensive structure. Despite Paraguay's heavy 4-1 defeat to the United States in their opening match, they were showing real resilience, real organization, real belief that they could get something from this game. And then came the confrontation. A hard foul triggered a brief scuffle between both sets of players. Almiron, Paraguay's captain and most creative force, became involved in a verbal exchange with Turkish right-back Mert Mulder. In the heat of it, in the compressed, electric atmosphere of a World Cup match with everything on the line, Almiron raised his hand and covered his mouth as he spoke. Turkish players saw it immediately. They turned to the referee. They appealed. The signal went to VAR. Referee Ivan Barton reviewed the footage, and what he saw was a player covering his mouth during a confrontational exchange with an opponent. The law, as written, says that that is sufficient for a red card. Barton issued it. Almiron was dismissed. Paraguay, leading 1-0 minutes from halftime, playing the best football of their tournament, now had to defend for an entire second half with 10 men. The reaction from the Paraguay dugout was immediate and furious. Their coaching staff protested on the touchline. Players surrounded the referee, not because anyone was arguing that Almiron had not covered his mouth, the footage was clear, but because the punishment for covering your mouth at a World Cup is now the same as the punishment for a serious foul that endangers a fellow professional's career. The same card that ends a 32-year-old's World Cup night also ends it for a player who put his hand near his face during an argument. The tempers continued to flare at the halftime whistle. Both benches exchanged heated words in the tunnel. The drama that had unfolded in the final moments of the half had changed the temperature of the entire match. Turkey, galvanized and now facing a 10-man opponent, equalized in the second half. The match ended 1-1, a draw that leaves both Turkey and Paraguay in a precarious group position, with the United States having already accumulated 6 points from 2 matches. For Paraguay, the draw may not be enough to survive the group stage, and the man who was supposed to lead them through it, their number 10, their captain, will now be suspended for their final group match. Whether that red card was justified is the question that has consumed football tonight, and the answers depend entirely on what you believe the rule is trying to achieve. The intent behind the law is clear and serious. Racism in football is a genuine crisis. Players who direct racial abuse at opponents have found cover for years in the simple act of covering their mouths, making accusations impossible to prove, investigations impossible to conclude, and accountability impossible to deliver. The Prestiani-Vinicius incident was not an isolated moment. It was a symptom of a pattern that has existed in the sport for years. FIFA and IFAB looked at that pattern and decided that if the act of concealment carries an automatic presumption of guilt, the incentive to use it disappears. The logic is not without merit. If players know that covering their mouth during a confrontation will result in a straight red card, the behavior stops, the cover disappears. Whatever is being said becomes visible, verifiable, and accountable. But the law as applied in Santa Clara tonight raises a different question entirely. Did Miguel Almiron say something racist to Mert Mulder? Nobody knows. The referee does not know. VAR does not know. The law does not require the answer. The law requires only that a player covered their mouth during a confrontation, and that, by itself, now ends your participation in a World Cup match. That is a legal principle that would not survive scrutiny in any courtroom in the world. A presumption of guilt attached to a physical gesture, without evidence of harm, without testimony, without verification of what was actually communicated. In the name of fighting racism, a cause that deserves every tool football can bring to it, a rule has been created that punishes a player for an action rather than an act, and the first person to be punished under it may not have said anything wrong at all.
Former players and coaches have been vocal since the final whistle.
The criticism is not of the anti-racism intention, it is of the instrument chosen to pursue it. A red card is the most severe individual sanction the game possesses. Its power comes from its rarity and its proportionality, reserved for the most dangerous fouls, the most serious acts of violence, the most extreme moments of foul play. By applying it to a gesture, a physical covering of a mouth, FIFA has detached it from the concept of proportionality and attached it to something entirely different. You could cover your mouth by instinct. You could cover your mouth because you are whispering something to a teammate. You could cover your mouth because you are coughing. The law says the covering must be deliberate and must occur during a confrontation. But deliberate is a judgment call. Confrontational is a judgment call. And tonight in Santa Clara, referee Ivan Barton made both of those calls in real time, under enormous pressure, with a World Cup match hanging in the balance. He may have made the right call under the law as written. Whether the law as written is itself right is a different question, and it is now one of the most urgent conversations in the sport. There is a further dimension that deserves to be addressed honestly. This rule was created in direct response to an incident involving Vinicius Jr. and an allegation of racial abuse. The cause it is designed to serve is one of the most important in football. Players of color who have suffered racial abuse on pitches for decades, who have been told that nothing can be done because nothing can be proved, deserved a response from football's governing bodies. The question is whether this response is the right one. Because if the consequence of this rule is that it creates an escape route for those who want to manipulate it, players who accuse opponents of mouth covering during normal confrontations as a tactical means of getting a red card, then the rule designed to protect players from abuse becomes a tool for a new kind of exploitation. That risk is not theoretical. It emerged within minutes of tonight's red card, in discussions across social media and among former professionals being interviewed on broadcast channels. And somewhere in Asunción and in Paraguayan communities across North America, football fans who had watched their team score the fastest goal of this tournament and play the best football of their World Cup campaign are sitting with the result of this new law. 1-1. Their captain suspended, their World Cup hopes on the edge. Miguel Almirón is 32 years old. He plays his club football for Atlanta United in MLS, a club based in the same city where the World Cup has been unfolding this week. He has given his career to football at the highest level. He has served his country with distinction across 9 World Cup appearances. And tonight, he became the first player in the history of the game to be dismissed for covering his mouth. Whatever he said or did not say behind that hand, his name is now written permanently into football's record books for a reason he could not have anticipated when he woke up this morning. The game he played in has changed. The law that changed it was debated for weeks before it arrived here. And tonight, in Santa Clara, it arrived in the most dramatic, most consequential, most contested way imaginable. Football has a new red card offense. The world saw it for the first time tonight, and the conversation about whether FIFA's newest rule has made the game better or simply made it different is going to continue long after this World Cup is over.